Hello everybody and welcome back to another wonderful episode of Guapish Rule 34. As always, I'm your host Tanner, and today I'm joined by my very special co-host Nico.
Alright, so here's the thing, guys. I don't think that Israel is a legitimate state at all, but that doesn't necessarily think that Palestine is either, you know? I say we just wipe them both out at the same time and get it all done with.
I couldn't agree more, but let's hear from our resident Jewish member of the cast, Jackson.
I've lost my Jew card. I'm in financial ruin, guys. Please help me.
And you can help him by going over to patreon.com/Guapish. For only $1 a month, you'll be able to help this poor man finally regain his Jewish standard card.
Jewish standard card, that's funny.
Yeah.
I can already tell right now my audio is going to sound like horse shit this episode because this room is very echoey.
Oh, that's fun.
Bummer. Not much I can do about that, though.
What are you saying? You can't, grab a bunch of, the pillows around the Airbnb and just, staple them into the walls?
No, I don't think I'd be able to pull that one.
Bummer.
Speaking of Airbnbs, guys, I'm in Idaho right now.
Holy shit, Idaho, dude.
I sure am. You guys have much experience with Airbnbs?
No, I've literally never stayed in one.
I think my family used Airbnb on our spring vacations when we'd go down to Lincoln City.
Okay.
But I've never rented one myself, so I don't fucking know.
That's interesting. I've rented a couple so far in my life. It's pretty neat. It is kind of weird because a lot of the time you are just kind of straight up in someone's house. They got their Guess Who game just out here, that's someone's property.
Yeah. You could steal it and they'd be none the wiser.
I could, I guess.
Yeah.
If I wanted to do that.
That reminds me, back when I was a child, we used to go to this same house over and over again that we'd rent just every year, basically, when we went to Lincoln City. And one year, we had, one of those retractable, extendo dog leashes. And I think it was maybe me. I'm not entirely sure who did it at this point. It's been way too long. But I let go of it or something, and it fucking flew back and smashed a hole in the wall. So our method of dealing with that was just putting a chair in front of the hole in the wall. And to my knowledge, the people who were renting never said anything about it, which is funny. But we also never went back and stayed at that house anymore, which sucks. That place was fucking sick. It had a downstairs garage area with a bunch of games. And there was the whole upstairs was a massive loft with a big bridge that went across to two separate rooms. It was cool as fuck.
That does sound like a pretty sweet time. I guess my closest experience to that is for a couple of years during college, me and our good friend Gary Jones, a good friend of the channel, he had his family's got quite a bit of money, and so he had a beach house that we'd all just go stay at for over the weekend for Halloween and shit like that. And it'd just be 3 couples there, and we basically wouldn't interact with each other whatsoever. We'd just be sequestered in our rooms fucking the whole time. It was a grand old time, dude.
Could you have guys done an Airbnb in Japan?
No. Alas, Tanner. Japan has passed some laws over the past couple of years or so. They made it so Airbnb is basically dead in Japan.
Oh, that's kind of lame. Why'd they do that?
Lobbying from the hotel industry.
That is...
Fortunately, hotels are crazy cheap there, so it wasn't that bad.
Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of Japan, though, Tanner, holy shit, this is something that Jackson and I forgot to bring up previously. However, dude, I think that there's something we really need to talk about. One massive glaring flaw that Japan has, because as you may know, Tanner, Japan is a fantastic country. I love the place. Best country on earth, I must say, However, there's a glaring weak spot in their armor here,
They don't speak English.
That, but also... the fucking napkin situation there is an absolute travesty. Jackson can attest to this.
Yeah, they suck.
They don't have napkins, or what? What's the specific issue?
Oh, they have napkins, Tanner. However, instead of being normal ass paper napkins that we have here, they're made out of plastic or some shit instead, and they just don't do anything.
What? Huh?
Right?
How does that work? Are they bendable?
They don't. Well, yeah, no, they're weird, plasticky wax paper, which is, yeah, it's strange. They fucking suck. They really don't do a whole lot of anything. They feel uncomfortable to use, and they just don't work at all. And they're everywhere. Basically, every restaurant we went to had them. It was unfortunate.
Yeah, that's weird. They are in fact made out of wax paper.
Like, what the fuck is up with that? Why did they ever think that was a good idea?
Maybe they don't have a large enough lumber industry to support regular paper napkins.
I guess it's possible they don't want to like import that shit from China or whatever. Oh well. Alright, so here's something that I'm not sure either of you are aware of. I don't really know why you would be. It's not like that big of a deal. However, Tanner, you are intimately familiar with Wendigoon, correct?
Yeah, I watch his channel pretty frequently.
Yeah. You know the guy, you've broken bread with him, you've had like some nice heart-to-heart conversations with him every now and then. Wendigoon, big friend of the channel here. However,
yeah,
recently he's fallen into some more beef here, okay? And very one-sided beef. I don't think that Wendigoon has even noticed that this is a thing, because a very small channel I watch called Reviewed to Death, he does just like King of the Hill reviews. And recently, in one of his videos, he just kind of went to like this big tirade about how much he hates Wendigoon.
Why?
Basically, the reason that he gave for it was that he doesn't like that Wendigoon is basically it's just, he doesn't like that Wendigoon is a Christian.
Right.
Which, you know, big shocker there. And that like fucking Wendigoon uses his videos as just like entertainment, but then occasionally like makes more religious videos to like, you know, I guess he thinks that he's like trying to fucking covertly convert people into Christianity is his big problem here.
Well, this guy's trying to convert people to King of the Hill, so...
Exactly.
Like, he exclusively makes King of the Hill content?
Yeah, basically.
Okay, hold on. This guy has 12,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
Why are you bringing this up at all?
Because, dude, it fucking bothered me when I saw it.
Okay, what video was it in?
It was in his most recent, like, Season 2 retrospective or whatever.
Ranking the episodes of Season 2?
Yeah, that's the one.
What was the context he would have even brought up Wendigoon in this?
Okay, so there's an episode in that season about, like, fucking, there's, like, this new lady who comes to their church called Junie Harper or whatever, and she is, like, trying to, like, get rid of Halloween and shit like that, and he compares, like, people like her to Wendigoon, because...
What?
Because they're both Christians, I guess. It's a very loose connection here.
Yeah.
He's like, people like this are ruining the platform because they're trying to covertly make people Christians or something, I guess.
It's not even covert, though.
Yeah, that was like one of his big talking points. He's like, Wendigoon literally says this at one point. He says he's trying to, get people to be more into Christianity. And I think that's just fucked up.
My face when Christians are being Christian.
Yeah. Like, Wendigoon has a video talking about, I have no mouth and I must scream, and if you didn't know, the author was an atheist, so it's super fucked up Wendigoon is using as a Trojan horse for Christianity. And like, you know, Wendigoon doesn't talk about religion whatsoever in that video, but still, the fact that you would make a video about this is just abhorrent.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just like a cringy retard that is angry at someone else who's more successful than them.
The thing is, I like his videos generally. I think that he does have some, he does bring some interesting perspectives to like some of his analyses. But yeah, that one just was not it at all. It was a very strange tirade he went off on.
Yeah.
But oh well, dude, c'est la vie, I guess. I guess the dude just has some sort of a greater purpose.
What a terrible segue.
I don't see you trying here, Tanner.
I mean, you know, I could still criticize without contributing.
Alright, so Tanner, you know about solo leveling. Nico, you also know about solo leveling. Let's just say there's like basically like a solo leveling kind of screen, but maybe not like some gamery bullshit. Just basically like a fucking screen pops up in front of every living person on Earth with a timer of 24 hours. And it basically just says, do you want to fulfill a greater purpose? And the button says yes or no. Mm-hmm. Would you click the button? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what happens when the timer runs out. And I guess more context: if somebody does click the button, they disappear, but nobody knows where they're going.
Yeah, I'd definitely click no then.
Yeah, I'd be absolutely terrified of that. I would not click the button.
I see. You wouldn't think it's something from God?
No, I'd think it's something from demons.
Yeah. Like, my first reaction to that would be to pull out my phone and look up, what does this mean?
Yeah, it'd also just be like just straight up in your fucking view forever until the 24 hours runs out.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you couldn't like go driving or anything safely.
Would you fucking click that shit?
No, I'd be horrified.
Yeah.
As most people would. I'm sure most people would be absolutely horried.
Yeah,
of the
especially when
prospect
they
of clicking
see
the
someone
button.
actually click yes and then completely disappear. I feel as though most people would be put off by that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Interesting, though. I really thought you guys would say yes to that. I didn't. I guess I don't know. My initial assumption was that you guys would both just think it's like something from God.
Yeah, you pegged
No.
us wrong, you son of a bitch.
That's not really how God works. He usually isn't in your face like that.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I don't fucking know. The rapture is a pretty gaudy event from what I know of, and I figured maybe it was like something
that
like
only
that.
happens once at like the end of time, you know?
Yeah, and this is the end of time potentially. Maybe he knows what's going to happen and you don't. So clicking the button could do all sorts of random shit. Maybe it instantly teleports you to heaven.
Yeah, maybe.
There you go.
And after the 24 hours runs out, everybody dies and the world explodes.
That would
Be
fun.
a bummer.
That would be a real stinky event. Yeah, I'd wait that shit out. I'd enjoy my last 24 hours. I'd probably assume I'm gonna die if I don't click it, but also I'd be too scared to die if I did click. That's basically all the hypothetical was.
Okay.
Fair
Do you guys
enough,
think
dude.
Dylan would click the button?
I'm actually very curious. I feel like I would peg him actually to have he would. I feel like he would.
I think
But also, I
agree with you.
read both of you guys wrong, so that really
True.
doesn't mean much.
Yeah, so who knows what that man would do?
I'm curious what the answer to that question would be on like a larger scale, like how many people in the general population would click it or not, or just wait it out.
I kind of have to think of like who is the type of person that does click the button though. Like presumably it has to be someone who like very acutely feels they do not have a purpose in life.
Yeah, it sounds like the same sort of person who would join a cult, I guess.
Yeah, definitely target
Yeah,
people that don't have a
actually.
very high self-esteem because they think they could maybe help accomplish something by clicking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
I-
feel like there'd be like with that 24 hours would be a crazy period in time. The whole fucking world would just be going on fire with it. I'm sure there'd probably be a lot of people that'd be like campaigning to get people to click the button just because they think there's like some doomsday event. And as obviously if everyone's seeing it, then there's probably a reason. Obviously, there's almost certainly a reason if that was popping up.
Yeah, presumably.
Yeah, no, it's just some fucking really smart techno guy who's just fucking with everybody.
Yeah, and Musk
Yeah.
is just testing out the Neuralink.
Yeah, it's all holograms and Starlink. That kind of parlays pretty well into my topic here. You guys, do you guys generally speaking believe in the supernatural? Just things that we aren't really able to explain via conventional scientific means?
No.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
I think there could be some spooky specters out there, you know?
Yeah.
Some sort of demonic presence.
Yeah. I become more convinced of it as I get older, just because, like, I just look at a lot of the stuff that people do, specifically, like, the evil things people do out in the world, and, like, you know, the conventional, like, materialistic explanations for these things is like, oh, people are greedy or crazy or, you know, they have illusions of grandeur or whatever. But for a lot of this stuff, we kind of just hit a point where I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me for them to be doing these actions unless, like, evil is a tangible, like, energy almost, and these people are able to harness it somehow by perpetuating evil acts.
Yeah.
That's certainly one way of looking at it. I think it's mostly just their brain's really fucked up, and their brain is just confused, and it makes them do horrible things.
Yeah, they have some sort of a mental health thing going on.
Yeah, the brain is something that we don't really know a ton about still, and there's a lot of crazy shit that can happen with it. So I just chalk it up to some fucking crazy mental health issues 99% of the time. I don't imagine it's like the fucking devil possessing him or something, or like there's like a fucking ghost manipulating them or some shit.
I mean, I agree that that's the case for, like, I'd say even the vast majority of people, but, you know, I think there are, like, certain people where you look at them and you're like, okay, this wasn't someone who was crazy or had some sort of emotional disturbance or whatever. They were, like, very clearly and intentionally choosing to inflict evil upon the world.
Have you guys, that reminds me of like a fucking true crime video I watched relatively recently, where it's basically, I don't know if you guys have seen this video or not, I assume not, but it's basically just like this really smart kid, like he's like a fucking uber quant, and he's also of course like insanely autistic, And he's got like a loving family. He's got a sister and he's got like 2 parents that like love him, and it's a really good family situation. But the kid randomly just goes under like some crazy psychosis one day and just fucking I think he kills his sister. And then he was planning on killing his entire family, but I think his dad was able to stop him. So he ended up just killing his sister for no reason. And then, in like the post interview, he like confesses to everything. He's basically just like, I don't know what came over me. I feel like I didn't have any control over my body. And basically everyone's like, I just had momentary psychosis for some reason. Nobody really knows why. I could see, I'm assuming that type of situation is what you're referring to.
No, I'm thinking of like something that comes to my mind is like Epstein, you know? Literally, he created, a child sex trafficking ring, one of the most, like, inhumanly evil things you can imagine. And, from all appearances, he wasn't crazy. He just was evil, I guess. Like, he didn't seem to do this. He didn't really do it for money. Well, I mean, he says he did it for, like, money and power, but, like, he probably could have gotten that without, doing literally the worst thing you could do as a human being. And so it kind of just makes me question, okay, I mean, is he and other, like, primarily, wealthy and well-connected people, have they figured out a way to actually, like, harness spiritual energy, specifically evil energy in some way, and that's why they will do stuff like this?
Tanner's definitely going to become the crackpot of the group in the next 10 years.
Tanner's slowly slipping into the adrenochrome shit.
I think it's straight up just the guys, like, let's just look at from like a macro scale of just pedophiles in general, right? Pedophiles do fucked up horrible shit. We all know that. It's a relatively in the grand scheme of things a common occurrence, I would say, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. He just has a lot of power. He has the ability of doing this thing, and he also has a ton of friends that are also with him on doing it and support him doing it. So if he has the ability of doing that, and he's, on like a macro scale, he's generally like all these other people. He's just doing it in a far more, sophisticated manner. I don't think there's really anything special. I mean, obviously it's super fucked up. It's horrible he's doing it, and it's awful. But I think it's probably a crazy statement, but I think most pedophiles, if they had ease of access, they'd probably do something similar if there was like an option for them. Obviously, that takes a massive amount of money and connections and all this shit. But I think if people want to do fucked up things, they're just kind of going to do it if they have the option to. Even like good people will go and do, fucked up things every once in a while. It's just what people are.
Yeah, same definitely with Jackson here. I do think that, what Epstein did was more so just like, oh, he was a pedophile who had the ability to do this shit, rather than like, I don't know, he was being fucking possessed or something,
Well, I literally haven't mentioned possession once. I don't know why you guys keep bringing it up.
Because that's just what we think of when you're talking about like it's being like some supernatural event. That's just the easiest way for us to conceptualize what you're talking about, I guess.
No, I just mean like I don't know, if I'm to explain it in like the simplest way possible, like if like hurting someone would release some sort of negative energy out into the aether or whatever. And by doing these evil things, they're releasing more of that energy, and then they're somehow, capturing that energy and using it to, I guess, enrich themselves. Like my question is, I don't know what the timeline exactly with Jeffrey Epstein is. Was he a pedophile and doing all that stuff before he became, more wealthy than any man would ever need to be?
Presumably.
Yeah, potentially. I think that a lot of Epstein's early life is just a complete mystery to us, is the issue here.
Right.
So it's tough to say, man. But yeah,
that's quite the theory you've got going there. I do not agree with it at all, of course, but I think it's an interesting thing to think about.
I just, to me, it's just like you kind of look and see the kinds of people who are most effectively able to sort of inflict their world on the way around them. And it always seems to be people who are either, perpetuating large amounts of good, large amounts of evil, or just as an individual have a huge amount of, like, sort of self-contained energy, I guess I would say. So there does seem to me to be, like, a pretty intrinsic connection between how materially wealthy, I suppose, or how esteemed you're able to make yourself, and the amount of either positive or negative energy you're like sending out into the world.
Yeah, I honestly think it just boils down to the accessibility of power. Like having any amount of power definitely gets to a lot of different people, whether that be they want to be like insanely altruistic with it and do a lot of good, or the entirely opposite scale, and they get a lot of power and they want to do horrible, incredibly selfish, self-fulfilling things. And I think that's really all it boils down to. People just have a ton of power and they just abuse it. It's not anything super deep over than that. Like even like at a minor scale, I keep fucking saying like minor and macro and major scale, whatever. People like fucking like think of like some guy that gets like a managerial position, like a kind of managerial position at like a fucking summer camp, and they go off and be like a fucking Nazi about it because they get a little bit of power. That's a pretty common thing. And of course, that's just a minor way of looking at it. And that also would scale up a lot, given them having even more power. They'd be even fucking worse. Yeah, like Hitler, for example.
Yeah, I think it really does just come down to like one's ambition sort of thing. Like how much drive they really have to do this kind of shit. Like, you know, your normal guy isn't gonna want to go out and like attain a shitload of power or whatever. They don't really have any reason to do that at all. Outside of, I don't know, maybe being a bit more wealthy so they don't have to like, you know, work as much or some shit like that. So the only people who are going to be obtaining that sort of like authority in the world are those who like really have a reason to be doing it.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I guess you kind of have to ask, where does that ambition come from, really?
Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior.
Of course.
For with him all things are possible.
Genetics.
Do you guys think some people are like compelled more than your average person to do either good or evil?
I guess so, but that's entirely just like an upbringing thing, I would imagine. Or not even necessarily an upbringing thing. I think honestly it's like a good 50-50 split between like nature and nurture, where like they've got like really good parents that like make them want to do this thing, or maybe even the opposite. They have like horrible parents, and then they see people living in similar situations to them, and they want to benefit them somehow. I don't know. I think it's mostly just people going through life and they see stuff, and if they're in like kind of like what Nico was saying, if they're an ambitious person, they're going to want to go and attempt to do something about it, and if they're not, they're just going to kind of hang out, whether that be good or bad.
Yeah, sometimes people is just born like that, Tanner, that's all. Some people are just born fucked up, that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Speaking of what Jackson was mentioning earlier about like that one dude who just like snapped randomly, do you guys see that video of that like he was some like fitness influencer on YouTube or whatever, and he like made some video talking about how like he had just recently come out of his depression. He was gonna start working out more. He was really gonna start applying himself a lot, and he's on his way out of the gutter or whatever at this point. And then like the next few days, he goes on a fucking rampage, breaks into some lady's garage, and fucking starts eating her.
No, I didn't hear about that.
Oh, okay.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Why'd he eat her?
He snapped, I guess. It just happens sometimes. He was at like dinner with his parents or whatever, and then he just fucking bolted out of the restaurant and hunted this woman down and started destroying her.
Did he know her?
No, I think she was just like some random lady. He like murdered her and her husband.
My God.
And the police had to put like a bunch of bullets into him to get him down.
Yeah.
The mind's a crazy thing, man. If you're like, if you're really on that like breaking point, you really don't have a ton of agency. Like even myself, I've struggled with depression specifically in like high school and early college, and I guess technically still a little bit today, but I don't really think about it that much anymore, thankfully. But I did some fucked up shit, you know. Like if you're just like in a really, really horrible state of mind, I feel like you don't really have a ton of agency over your own actions. And sometimes you just like want to take out some like anger you have on just the world itself, and that ends up manifesting itself as you doing something horrible to somebody else. And maybe he was just doing that. He just saw some random fucking woman, and he just was like so angry and like overwhelmed. Honestly, I'm not justifying his actions here, of course.
I think he was right to do it after all. The guy was in a tough spot. He just needed a little release.
Yeah, I don't know. He was just completely fucking crazy. His brain was just like insanely fucked up, and he just really didn't have much control over himself. And then he was already kind of in too deep at a point, and then that just kind of, it was like a vicious cycle at that point.
Yeah. I definitely get that though, man. Like, sometimes when you get into that dark place, you just do some fucked up things. It happens to us all, man.
Yeah, everyone, anyone can commit
Everyone
a little
goes and
cannibalism.
devours someone randomly.
Yeah, exactly. He needed to meet his protein macros, dude.
Yeah. He was getting stressed out because that meal just wasn't going to be enough for him.
Mm-hmm.
Tanner, would you say you have like a favorite serial killer at all?
Favorite serial killer?
Yeah.
You know, I find that one guy who's like 6'9" and has a 200 IQ very funny, just as a concept.
There you go. Yeah.
Just because he seems like extra scary to me, because like a lot of times serial killers just straight up are not that physically imposing.
Yeah.
A lot of them are kind of dumb to boot. But yeah, the fact that that guy is just this fucking giant who's also like Einstein level smart, I just find kind of funny. I think he's still alive too.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, definitely check out a lot of shit about like serial killers and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. As far as like them being dumb goes, like yeah, it's really shocking. Like just how many of them only got away with it because like the investigative like technology back then was just so rudimentary that they just couldn't really catch someone if they didn't see them committing the crime.
Mm-hmm.
That is shocking, though. I kind of pegged you for more of a Son of Sam kind of guy. Fair enough, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really look at enough serial killer stuff to have an opinion.
Makes sense.
What about you, Nico? What's your favorite serial killer?
Dude, I don't have one. They're fucked up people. Why would I pick one as my favorite? Oh, actually, there is like this one dude. I don't even know if you can really classify him as a serial killer. I don't really, I guess, but like whatever. There's like this dude locked up in the UK. I'm pretty sure he's like still in prison, like completely in solitary, because he was like a male prostitute. And like one of his like Johns who came in at some point, I was like showing a bunch of pictures of like all the kids he's been raping or whatever, and he just like murdered the guy because of that. And then he got locked up, and he just immediately started killing a bunch of pedophiles in prison, so they had to confine him.
Oh, okay.
And now he's just not allowed to talk to anyone anymore.
Bummer. I think free my boy. He didn't do nothing wrong.
Exactly. They don't even give him a TV or anything. He's just like fucking sitting there.
My dude's a fucking... No, I'm not gonna say martyr. That's not the right word. But yeah, dude. Free
He's
my
a
boy.
hero is what he is, Jackson.
Mm-hmm. What do gay rights if even gays who murder pedophiles aren't allowed to be free?
Yeah, the man did nothing wrong. I mean, who knows, like, how many of those guys who murder in prison were, like, you know, actually pedophiles? Like, you know, they got convicted, but maybe one or two of them wasn't, like, actually doing nothing.
I mean, you know, once they're in the clink, just treat them as guilty.
They're all the same at that point.
I don't know, you guys want to talk about the campus takeovers before they're done and out of the news?
I guess so.
Jackson, give us a rundown of the campus takeovers.
Okay, so basically we've got college campuses and they've been taken over.
That's so true. So, Tanner, what exactly are they doing? Like, they're fucking, like, occupying, like, these colleges or whatever, like, hanging out in the quad and shit like that. Are they, like, actually doing anything, like, destructive or anything like that?
I think the worst they're doing is, like, making it difficult or, in some cases, preventing other students from accessing the buildings.
Okay.
And also, you know, it's just kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Why? What's the reason for this? I don't know anything about any of this.
Okay, gotcha. It's a Palestine thing. They're protesting these college campuses because they want them to divest from Israel. How are these campuses invested in Israel? No one knows.
They're all funded by Raytheon, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so I legitimately, like, I hear them use the phrase divest from Israel and then we'll leave, but none of these protesters seem to have any idea what that means or how the colleges would go about doing that.
I mean, you know, you gotta look at, like, the head protester here. Like, a lot of these people, they're just there to fill some bodies for the old movement. You can't just, like, go up and ask the random people. They're just being swept up in the motions right now.
It is funny, a lot of those, you know, on the street interviewer YouTube channels and whatever, they'll, like, walk up to random people at these protests. They're like, hey, what's this about? And they're like, I don't know, my friend told me to show up.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they'll walk up to their people, and they'll be, like, in the middle of chanting, like, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and they're like, hey, what does that mean? And they're like, I'm not totally sure, to be honest. I wish I were more educated on the issue. I've seen multiple people in these interviews, like, protesters in these interviews go, to be honest, I should be more educated on the issue.
Yeah.
It's fun. At
least they have any self-awareness about it. I was thinking that as well. At least they're kind of self-aware. But it does seem funny to me that
protesting at some point between like the 60s and today went from being exclusively a thing for like the people who are like most informed and passionate about issue to like, I don't know, I guess for casuals. Did I cut out there, or?
No, dude, we just don't care. Anyways,
Tanner, do you have like any issues with the way in which like police are taking down these people, the way in which these frat boys are like going in there and just like manhandling these poor protesters who are just trying to, you know, get the Palestinians to be safe finally?
No, I think that shit's funny as fuck.
Oh, okay.
They don't have a right to just... Ironically, they're like the whole protest is over Palestine and it being occupied by Israel, and then they're going and occupying someone else's property.
Well, what else do you want them to do, man? Sign a petition?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, you can't just, you know, take over private property and, you know, accost people. Mm-hmm. So, like, no, I don't really care about police, you know, enforcing laws and frat boys making fun of them.
What would you say is generally like the best way of like dealing with, you know, like there's some big social issue that you want to change? Like, is there any particular avenue you feel like is the best way of going about that?
The best way is the following. A, does it directly involve you? If it does not, go home. B, just pester your congressperson, I guess. Like, be really annoying to them. I mean, that's really the thing. Like, you need to annoy people, the people who... Because protesting is just being annoying, but, like, with a fancy name. Mm. You need to annoy the people who can actually make the change you're trying to see happen. Like, you know...
And there it is, that's it. It's just those 2 steps. That's all you have to do.
No, like, because, like, you know, what is Harvard gonna do about the fucking Israeli-Gaza war, you know?
They're gonna stop funding Raytheon.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And speaking of funding Raytheon, are you guys ready for the Raytheon-funded segment, Guapish at the Movies?
Guapish at the movies.
Come go around, people, wherever you roam.
And we got that about were approaching, and the wind began to howl. Jackson, what did we watch this week?
Our Patreon pick this week, as requested by Lucas Zadek. Fuck You is the Zombieverse film from 2014. Actually, not Fuck You, Lucas Zadek. This movie was kind of funny. I'm going to be honest, it's a little guilty pleasure. This one actually was kind of funny.
Okay.
I guess I'll give the rundown of it. So basically, some fucking truckers dropped a thing of nuclear waste in a pond, and that made the beavers turn into zombies, and now the beavers also turn other things into zombies if they bite them, and there's some, like, people having a little girls trip, and then their boyfriends come and hang out and interrupt it, and it's just some stupid, dopey comedy horror film, quote-unquote horror film. Not a ton of substance with this one, unlike Tanner's Haiku, which has much amounts of substance.
That's right, my haiku as inspired by Zombievers. Girls' night in the woods. Boys, beavers, and bears, oh my. Please shave your beaver.
Do you prefer shaved beavers, Tanner?
I do prefer shaved beavers, actually.
Dude, as long as, like, you know, it ain't around the, like, the beaver lips area, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
That's when it starts getting gross to me.
True.
Like the little heart shape above it.
Yeah, now that's just adorable, Jackson. As for these beavers, though, guys...
Yeah.
I gotta say, I think that in Tanner's words, in the immortal words of Tanner, this might just be the perfect film.
Yeah, I disagree.
What, were there, like, any actual issues with it?
I think it's a bit too long, it's a bit too slow in areas.
This movie's crazy short, though.
True, which is...
This shit's, like, barely over an hour.
Nico, you're really making the fucking cogs in Tanner's head turn right now.
Yeah.
What do you mean? It can be short and still fucking drag.
That's not what I'm talking about at all.
Okay.
Now look, Tanner, while it may not be your cup of tea, it does offer a tongue-in-cheek homage to those classic, you know, more like creature horror films of the day, you know? Some of that classic schlock cinema, as it were. You're a big fan of schlock cinema, are you not?
I do like schlock. I would not say this is schlock.
I thought you were going to say you would not say this is cinema.
I also wouldn't call this schlock. I think this movie's peak. I think it's funny as fuck that they didn't use CG for most of the beavers.
Yeah.
There definitely was plenty of CG in this film, but they were surprisingly restrained with it, and most of it was practical effects, which I can appreciate. That was pretty funny.
Even when there is like the occasional CG, it's like it feels much more intentionally cheesy, if anything.
I still think my favorite parts of the movie were just when the fucking beavers were like poking out the holes and shit. They're just fucking like really like putting no effort into it, but just like stabbing them.
Yeah.
So fucking stupid. Yeah, there's not a whole ton to talk about with this film. It is just a fucking comedy at the end of the day. So as we say with most of the comedy films we watch, it kind of just boils down to talking about the funny parts of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say,
yeah,
I am glad that they added in, the later wrinkle that the people turn into werebeaver.
Yeah, that
was funny.
That was a fun little subversion there. Like, you think you're gonna get a hot and steamy lesbian scene where you're gonna see some beavers going at it, but instead the woman fucking just turns into a big old zombie beaver and tries to destroy her.
Yeah, I think the movie would have been much more boring if it was just the zombie beavers the whole time.
Yeah, this is also, of course, a comedy horror film. I definitely think they should have leaned a bit more into the absurdity of it. Yeah. Like, obviously, they did a good amount of leaning into the absurdity of it. But it would have been a much better film if they just, like, made it, like, purely a comedy with horror elements rather than trying to still make, like, a generic horror film work with comedy.
Yeah.
That's just me, though. I think you should put all your eggs in one basket with this kind of thing.
Yeah, doing the half and half, it doesn't please anyone at the end of the day, You just end up kind of disappointing both sides here.
Yeah, so are you gonna, especially like a low-budget film like this, like, I think you should really just prioritize, am I gonna make like a good absurd comedy, or am I gonna make like a good horror film? No, they chose to make a fucking kind of generic horror film with some funny moments in it.
Yeah.
Which, whatever, I'm not the director. I can't make them do whatever they want, but I would have made it much more absurd, because it had a lot of absurdity, and it could have been a much better film if they really just leaned into it just being some ridiculous fucking stupidity.
Yeah, dude, like the fucking beavers, like, just knocking down trees to kill people. That was sweet. I loved that.
Yeah, no, big fan of that. Just, like, random goofy shit like that. I want to see more of that.
Yeah. Like, maybe that fucking one chick who turned into a zombie beaver, maybe she should have just, like, used her tail to just, like, smash one of the people's heads, just completely atomize it. That would have been sweet. But, at the end of the day, at least they had a nice pair of tits in the film, so can't be too angry at it.
True. It is pretty funny how obvious it is which of the female cast members were, like, really, okay with having their tits being in the movie as part of their contract, and the ones that weren't.
Yeah, I mean, like, even from, like, the get-go, the fucking, like, shirt she was wearing before she even, like, completely stripped down, it was, like, just, like, completely sheer, and you could very obviously see her tits.
Right.
Yeah, they cast her for a reason in this film.
I did enjoy the little subversion at the ending, though, with Bill Burr just, like, fucking blasting her. Just mowing that bitch down in the truck.
Fucking eviscerated her.
Yeah.
It was a callback to easier times.
Yeah.
Back before there were zombievers.
Alright, so I'm going to try to make this quick. So this is my review of Zombievers. I guess my quickest way to sum up this movie was, it was a bad movie that wasn't made terribly. That might be a wild statement to make, but I think for the most part it accomplished what it was trying to do. I think it was a sufficiently horror-ish movie. I don't know if it was scary per se. I liked the concept they were going with. There were a couple concepts in there that almost made no sense. They weren't linear. Ergo, like the infection of the zombie beaver virus or whatever you want to call it. But at least they kept it all consistent when people turned. I don't know if that's a valid reason. Didn't think the acting was terrible. I thought the plot was, fine enough. I like how they tried to split the difference between being funny and, like, horror at the same time, which, like I've said in the past, isn't an easy thing to pull off. But, yeah, I think the environment was sufficient for the movie. The idea, I remember saying at the end of the movie, that girl who was trying to wave down the truck, I was like, wouldn't it be funny if it's those guys from the beginning of the movie and it ends up killing her, and so there's no survivors, because, in these kinds of movies, it's either one survivor or no survivors. So I'm kind of glad, and I think it's kind of funny that they decided to kill off all the survivors. But, yeah, didn't think it was a horrible movie, but it was, like I said, it was a bad movie that wasn't necessarily made poorly. So for that reason, I'm giving Zombievers a C+.
Anyways, as far as the rankings go here, Tanner, what are you giving this one here?
I'm giving Zombievers a B minus.
Whoa. Dylan, who's not here today, unfortunately he's been enslaved, which, you know, we're going to try and get him back. Please subscribe to the Patreon if you want to see him again.
So
he gave this film a C+.
How about you, Nico?
Me, Zombievers is neat, I guess. Y'all also give it a C+.
Yeah, I'm definitely the lowest on the film. I gave it a C-.
Okay.
This is a pretty poorly produced film. I think me talking about the absurdity thing definitely drags it down a lot more.
Yeah.
Because it really, this movie would have been much more passable if it was just like a pure comedy. But a lot of this movie is just straight up boring, generic ass horror schlock. And I couldn't fucking care less about any of it. There's only like half of the film actually had like entertaining stuff going on for me, which drags it down a lot. But I do agree there is a lot of like fun absurdity stuff that they do with it. So I think as a comedy, it's like a fun watch, but it's still a bad movie.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
which shouldn't be a shock to anybody.
I think it is a little bit of a shock. You know, you were talking up the movie quite a bit.
Well, yeah, I was playing into the bit because it sounded like you were trying to do the fucking gaslighting bullshit we did to Dylan on Zoom to Tanner.
No, unfortunately not. I did think that there were some there were some highlights for this film. It's not like, you know, it's not an amazing film by any standards, but it's fine.
Yeah, no, you were trying to gaslight him by saying, I don't think there's anything wrong with this film. This is a perfect film, yeah.
Oh, no, it absolutely has its fair share of issues.
Yeah, that's why I assumed you were trying to gaslight him with you saying that. No. Like, immediately not even, like, calling it out. Anyways, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean.
Yeah, of course. I will say, one thing I did really appreciate about this movie is that the ex-boyfriend, you know, the cheater, he did a really smart thing in this movie, which was he used the dog as bait for the beavers. And I'm sure, you know, I'm positive that a lot of people are going to take issue with that and be like, oh my god, that's horrible. He killed a dog. But yeah, survival of the fittest, bro. Them people got to make it out of here somehow, okay?
Do you think Dylan would have liked the movie better if the dog didn't die?
You know, I was fucking shocked that he did not mention that at all in his review. Which, oh, by the way, I probably should have given a clean place to insert Dylan's review. Oops, oh well. But yeah, I'm shocked that he didn't mention that whatsoever.
What are you going to do with this review now? It's like put in the middle of it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You'll figure it out with editing magic. This movie landed at a C+, which is higher than I expected it to be completely honest.
Fair.
But, yeah, and I guess that leads us into our next film of the week. Nico's pick, that being the 2013 film Movie 43, which you can describe for us, I suppose. Good luck.
What the fuck even is there to say about this? There's no plot to it whatsoever, okay?
There is a plot, you dumb fuck. There's a bunch of kids trying to find Movie 43, and then they end up ending the world because they watch it, I think.
That's right. They do that in between like a bunch of SNL skits.
Yeah, this is literally just a skit movie. That's the whole point of it. It's just a bunch of random skits strung along with like a no point. Like, why is this a movie? What is this?
It's a money laundering scheme, I think.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of like massive actors in this film too. Like super, super weird.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know what the fuck to say about this movie because it is just, well, I thought that this week of Saturday Night Live had some fun skits in it. Some of them weren't so good, but, you know, that's television for you. I'm giving it a D+, or just some shit like that, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, you called me out on it when we were watching the movie. I didn't think this movie was funny at all.
No, you didn't.
And it's also just like not a movie. This is like this is like riding the line of, I guess, technically qualifying as a movie because of the stupid through line plot. But it's horribly acted for the most part. All of the skits are incredibly childish and just like dumb poop bodily humor bullshit that I couldn't fucking care less about. They had a little bit of clever ones, but for the most part, it was just really unfunny and stupid for me and not a movie.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, I really fucking hated this film. It was like the exact type of humor I just do not like at all.
Yeah.
Total waste of all of these actors' talents. Like, why the fuck would people agree to have them in this film?
Yeah.
What the hell? Yeah, no, this movie sucked ass. I actually hate this film. I have legitimately nothing good to say about it.
Yeah, like I checked out.
There was a few skits that were kind of okay, but that was literally it.
Yeah, exactly.
But they do not hold it up.
Like I checked out like a few reviews of it, and like, you know, I do think that the hatred for this movie is maybe a bit much, okay? Like, there are people saying that, like, this is the worst aspects of Hollywood distilled into a single film. This is fucking bullshit. It's an abomination of the art form. And it's like, okay. I feel, come on. It's just some people giving some goose and gaffs here. Like, I felt like, you know, there were some parts that were, that got a chuckle out of me that I enjoyed a bit. But, yeah, for the vast majority of it, it's like, man, this is nothing.
Yeah, there really isn't a whole lot to latch onto. It's just a bunch of skits strung together with some stupid through line. I want to hear Tanner talk about it because I think he actually enjoyed the film, but he's not here. He's taking a shit right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's on the can.
I'm so unlucky. What did Dylan say about the film?
Okay, so this is my review for movie 43, and luckily I actually caught this one as a comedy, unlike Happiness, unfortunately. But, and I don't remember if I was talking to Tanner or Jackson about this, but I remember drawing similarities to Happiness, but I did enjoy this one a fair bit more, and I remember saying, I wonder if I go back to watch Happiness like you guys have suggested, if I'd actually rank Happiness higher. I also just think Happiness probably wasn't my avenue of comedy. This movie wasn't necessarily my avenue of comedy either, but I still think it was better. And I must say, this movie is just loaded with B-list actors. There are 2 B-list actors that I recall are some of my more favorites. I can't be bothered to remember the names right now, but I don't know. I just thought it was entertaining to watch. It wasn't anything great. I think it's definitely an experiential movie. I'd probably go back to watch this movie again. But, you know, there's no crazy concepts. It's kind of just your classic, you know, run-of-the-mill old comedy, you know, sketch movies, I guess. So yeah, nothing great, nothing terrible. Like I said, I enjoyed this movie sufficiently more than Happiness, and I may or may not go back to watch that. But anyway, yeah, nothing really to say about this movie. I gave movie 43 a B-.
Man, listen to that guy. What a fucking weirdo. How does he think this is anything like Happiness? A piece of shit.
What's the TLDR of his review? Because I didn't listen to it.
Basically he was like, yeah, this is like, you know, it's like kind of funny. It's like if Happiness, like, you know, if I got that it was like a comedy going into it, like I might watch Happiness again some point, but you know, I thought that this one was pretty funny, but maybe I'll go back and watch Happiness at some point. That's basically the whole review.
How did he not understand that Happiness is a comedy? Ridiculous. Tanner, please tell us about this film and I'll see your haiku.
Which film are we talking about now?
43.
Movie 43? Why am I explaining movie 43?
You're not.
Because we've already talked about it. We've already been talking about it for like the last 5 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a fucking sketch show with funny little skits. Well, yeah.
Like, what's your opinion on the film?
Did I remember to write a haiku for this one?
You completely forgot.
Oh, here we go. Some random sketches. A threadbare plot to follow. Why was this made?
I said it's a money laundering scheme, personally. That's my guess.
It only cost $6 million to make, so I don't know if that makes much sense.
Well, you know how it is.
It's not a very good money laundering scheme.
Very poorly made one. Would this movie have done better if it came out today? Because I feel like
No.
Really? I feel like the more absurdist sense of humor it's going for is a bit more accepted today than it was back in 20 whatever the fuck.
Yeah, but at the same time, you just like hop onto YouTube and see like people make a fucking plethora of any of these skits, you know? Like, I feel like that it's really just more so for the novelty. Like, it's these big actors doing these wacky shit.
Yeah. My only 2 major thoughts are there's some genuinely funny stuff in here, but it's way too overbloated. Even the stuff I do think is actually funny, they just drag it on too long. Yeah, this should have been 1, maybe 2 episodes of a sketch comedy show, not a whole movie.
Would you guys say that you had a favorite skit in this at all?
No.
Okay.
I mean, the only one... Oh, okay. So the 2 that most immediately come to mind, therefore I remember the most, are the one where it's the guy with the ball sack on his neck.
Yeah.
And then the one with Halle Berry and that other dude. I think the ball sack one was probably funnier consistently, but the sort of, you know, last joke of the Halle Berry one was funnier. That being the guy got plastic surgery to make himself Chinese.
For me, the stand was absolutely the homeschooling one, I'd say.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like, that was really the only one where I was like, okay, I feel like they genuinely have a good thing going here. But yeah, for the most part, this movie is just, like, not super great, I would say. Apparently, from what I found, there are actually 2 different versions of it, where, like, you know, the shit that's, like, tying all these skits together is different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, like, the version that we watched, it's, like, these fucking stoner dudes trying to, like, prank their brother or some shit and ends up the world. But for the other version, it's just, like, a couple of guys going in to, like, try and pitch a bunch of movies.
That's what the description on Plex says it is.
Yeah, which is very strange. But, you know, I don't really know why they did that, but oh well, I guess.
What?
Yeah, they're probably like, okay, so like the pitching ideas thing's kind of boring, so let's make it a little bit more exciting. Let's spice it up and actually have a plot. And that's the best they could come up with in like an hour.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. But hey, at the very least, we got to see some tits in this movie as well, which was a banger. Jackson, what are you ranking this movie?
Oh, I'm starting us off with an absolute banger of F+.
I feel like that's a bit harsh.
I agree.
Did you hear my review?
Oh, I heard it, dude,
No.
but like, you know. Yeah, basically Jackson said that he doesn't find comedies funny, which is very unfortunate, but hey,
okay.
all the more power to you, Jackson. I'm giving it a D.
I'm giving it a C.
Wow. And Dylan's giving it a B-. We're kind of
Jesus.
all across the board on this one.
B- is fucking crazy. And overall, that puts us at a C-. How exciting.
Yeah.
Far too high.
Way too high.
Unlike our final film of the week, Tanner's pick, that being the 2009 film Watchmen. Please tell us about this 3-hour movie.
Dude, holy cow, I'm so excited to talk about Watchmen. I love Watchmen so much. Watchmen is the story, it's like an alternate history, basically, where people get inspired by the Superman comics to actually go out and be vigilantes. And we witness the story as of 1985, where we have our collection of retired vigilantes, one of whom is Rorschach, who is slowly discovering a plot, which involves killing off a bunch of the, superheroes and whatever. And as the plot is unraveled, we discovered it is actually a plan by one of the former heroes, Ozymandias, to detonate a bunch of nukes all over the world in order to stop the Cold War and unite the world against a common threat. In this case, the common threat being him framing the only super-powered individual in the world, Dr. Manhattan.
Insane. Dude, what was your haiku for this one?
Dude, here's my haiku as inspired by Watchmen. Where did I write that down? Dude, here we go. The world on the brink. The comedian is dead. What does justice mean? So, Watchmen is basically custom made for me and my interests. You know,
Yeah, that's what I was saying during the movie.
yeah, it involves a lot of politics, history. It's got the United States versus communism in there, philosophy, vigilantism, alternate history shit. Just like pretty much everything that I am interested in as a person. So like, I am very biased in favor of this film, obviously, and I've read the comics and like them.
Yeah. Yeah, you were so hyped for this movie that you started rereading the comics just so that you could be prepared for this.
And how were they, dude? Is the comic better?
Yes, but I don't think it's better in a way where like the movie like fucks up the story or anything. It's just like a lot of stuff has to be truncated just by virtue of it being a movie. Like one thing I was commenting on is like the opening credits of the movie is like an insane amount of world building that gets much more fleshed out in the comic, obviously. Like it basically shows the entire history of how we go from an identical 1940s to us to how we wind up with their alternate version of 1985. So, you know, the comic goes more in depth into stuff like that. I will say the biggest difference between the movie and the comic is the ending. And I think the movie actually does it better because what the ending is, you know, Ozymandias' big plan is he's going to nuke a bunch of cities, frame Dr. Manhattan for it, and that'll unite the world against Dr. Manhattan, thus averting nuclear war. His plan, his end goal is the same in the comics in that he's trying to avert nuclear war, but what he does in the comics is he genetically engineers a giant tentacle monster with psychic powers, which he teleports into the middle of New York, and when it dies, it unleashes a giant psychic blast, killing millions of people. And then the world unites against this, like, alien invasion threat.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that the movie plot is much better. Because it's less out of nowhere, because we know Dr. Manhattan, and it makes more sense to frame Dr. Manhattan. And it lines up much more neatly with the fear being nuclear war, that he would fake these nuclear attacks.
Yeah. But at the same time, Tanner, this is like an insanely polarizing film generally.
Right.
Why the fuck is that exactly? Like, why are there some people who just, like, do not like this movie?
I'm really unclear on it myself, actually. I don't want to insult their intelligence too much and say it just seems like they don't really get the idea that you have to cut out a lot of content in order to adapt a book into a movie.
Yeah.
But that does kind of just seem to be all it is. Like, a lot of the
This wasn't in the era of two-parters.
Right. Yeah, like a lot of the complaints just seem to be, oh, they don't go as in-depth into this character or talk about this very much, or they cut this out entirely. It's like, yeah, we're trying to shove a 12-issue comic book into a 3-hour movie. There's gonna be a lot of stuff cut down.
I mean, can't there be an argument for, splitting things up a bit so you can have a more fleshed out film? Like, maybe there isn't, like, clear, like, story arcs within the comic to do that. Maybe it is just, like, one continuous story arc and there isn't an easy way to adapt it into, a multiple film series. But with something like that, I feel like it's just to the detriment of the source material if you're going to just have to cut out a large amount of content that audiences would, in fact, want to know more of, but can't without, going and reading the source material.
So the something that immediately makes me think is Alan Moore, the writer of the comic, famously said that he does not think it is possible to adapt comic books into movies. So
hasn't he also said he doesn't like this movie either?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I guess that's kind of an argument in your favor, but not necessarily in the same way, because he's just saying that no, he basically believes that every piece of media, because it was specifically crafted for whatever its original format was, it cannot be faithfully or even well translated into any other media. Movies will always be best as movies. Things that were meant to be comic books will always be best as comic books, etc., etc.
I disagree. I mean, let's look at fucking Freyrin for a moment here. The Freyrin manga is cool, obviously. Everyone really likes the Freyrin manga. But the anime adapts it really well. It's very faithful to the material, but it also just elevates it to a completely different degree. Like, the art in the manga is really cool and detailed and all that. But the anime does it in, like, its own kind of style of anime, with having, like, the really absurd, over-the-top animation and fight scenes, with also having, like, really gorgeous background art and character animation and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's possible. It just takes a lot of skill to get an adaptation done right. Especially one with this kind of format where it's not, like, really set up to do it. Like, it's kind of unfair to compare, something like a manga to an American comic. And maybe I'm wrong about this because I have, like, literally no experience with comics. But a lot of the time, manga artists will straight up just write their manga and their stories in a format that would be easy to adapt, because they know that it's really common for popular mangas to become adaptations, and that will make them a fuck ton of money. So it's just really easy, especially, like, their producers will literally tell them to, like, make things structured in, like, story arc kind of ways with, like, really clear dividing lines, such that it is easy to adapt things that way into, like, seasons that are digestible. I don't know if that's how that works in the comic book world.
It's not at all.
Who knows? Then fair enough. It's a hard task. I would say overall, I honestly, without knowing anything about the source material, this movie is kind of messy to me. It's fast paced. It's really long. It's super dense, and it could have been longer. And I think it would have been better for it. But maybe to the detriment of being like absurdly long. But I think overall, it's a story that is cool and well told, generally speaking. And I think the adaptation succeeds.
I think
even though there are quite a bit of flaws due to just the nature of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely dependent on what people want when it comes to an adaptation. It seems like for a lot of people, it's well, I want my comic book, but I want it to be exactly the same. I want it to be beat for beat. Everything is just completely replicated, but now on the screen with people instead of pictures. Which, why would you want that?
Not how that works.
That seems very strange overall, I would say. It's certain concessions have to be made when you're adapting something to a different medium. And, as long as it, serves to, better create whatever, this new medium is, then it's, totally fine, I think. And, those changes had to be made for Watchmen, so, whatever, I guess. This film, I feel was pretty good, when we were watching, I was people really don't like this movie. And it's I thought it was great. I enjoyed it a lot. I do think that my biggest problem with it is that a lot of it does feel very meandering. It doesn't feel like a lot of the times it really has a clear vision, and we're kind of just following these characters. And it seems like a lot of the times they forget that the comedian died and they're supposed to be figuring out what the fuck happened there or whatever. At the same time, I still enjoy everything that's going on for the most part.
Yeah, I would, before Tanner, you go and defend it, I would also agree with Nico on this point. This is also a big disagreement I have with this film, too, is it does feel like there isn't, obviously there is a through line to the film. There's the mystery of, who's killing these, these superheroes and why that's happening. But I don't feel at least from my perspective, I don't feel like we got enough context clues to actually be, super engaged with this through line. And then all coalesce into a really rushed feeling ending for me.
It does feel very rushed.
And it kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth, or in my mind, I guess, because of that, where it's all I don't really feel like the movie really had a ton of direction with what it wanted to do, and then it all coalesces in a really rushed feeling ending, and it all just kind of feels weird to me. But I still think the whole package is really good, so that's not a massive detriment to it, even though it is still the big disagreement I have, I would say.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say as sort of a slight disagreement with you, Nico, is none of our I'd say none of our characters particularly care about the comedian. Most of them actively dislike him even, so the fact that they don't really the investigation is really only something Rorschach is really committed to throughout, and the rest of them just kind of hop in and out as they happen to be in the story, kind of reflects that in my mind, where first off, Night Owl and Silk Spectre and them, they don't even buy into the mass killer theory until pretty much the end of the movie. And Rorschach's the only one who really cares about finding out the truth. They don't really give a fuck about the comedian or why he died.
That's fair enough, but that also doesn't stop the fact that there isn't a clear through line for a casual watcher then. Because even if that makes sense in the context of, the film, it wouldn't be the best way of structuring it potentially. But of course also that might just be an adaptation issue, that there isn't an easy way of, having the film structured in a different way without fundamentally changing the plot structure.
Yeah, so I'll say two more big changes. Not maybe big, but noticeable changes from the comic. One of them, especially that I think a lot of people complain about, is Dr. Manhattan. In the comic, Dr. Manhattan's whole shtick is that, they make a really big deal out of the fact that he perceives his entire, his past, his present, and his future. From his perspective, they are all happening at the exact same time. And as a result, he's, basically confused a lot of the time, and he has a hard time, taking decisive action. And that's, a really big part of the comic, his sort of struggle with that perception of time and what that means. That is a very hard thing to portray in a film, because in a comic book you can do the panel system to show, okay, here he is at these different points in his life, but we know that these are all happening at the same time. That's a bit harder to pull off in a comic, and or in a movie, and I think the movie definitely does not play up that aspect of his character nearly as much.
Frankly, I don't think they really do it that much at all. If anything, it just kind of feels like he's omnipotent for the most part, and they don't really show the downsides of that perspective. Because I think that's a cool way of doing it. And honestly, I definitely have my gripes with Dr. Manhattan with the way they talk about like the future and stuff. Because I was questioning the way the movie was portraying him. Like, if he knows his future, he should know that all of this shit is gonna happen at some point, and they're probably he could pretty easily thwart the main antagonist. Is it just he's like so apathetic about it, he just doesn't give a shit, and that's why he didn't stop it?
So it's partially, yes, he's apathetic. They do mention this in the movie through dialogue and whatever, that Ozymandias had figured out a way to sort of counteract his ability to see the future by releasing tachyon particles, which are particles that can travel backwards in time. And so he created tachyon particles while he was initiating his plan that went backwards in time and kind of fucked up Dr. Manhattan's ability to see the future.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I totally missed that part. Or forgot about it. One of the two.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that, like, Rorschach is much more the main character in the comic. Like, he's very much the one we fought. He's like the through line, basically. Like, we get to see a much more driven and sequential story because we are pretty much always following Rorschach, except for the handful of times we'll cut away to other characters to see what they're doing. Like, for example, in the movie, it is Night Owl, I think, just by himself, that goes and sees Ozymandias, aka Adrian Veidt, and warns him about the mass killer, or, you know, tells him about the comedian getting killed. In the comic, it's Rorschach that, you know, ends up meeting up with everyone and telling them this information one by one.
Mm-hmm. Which, like, you know, the fucking, as Jackson was saying earlier, with, like, the rushed ending, it did just feel very weird how, like, you know, Rorschach and Owlboy.
Are we saying rushed because it does happen pretty quickly that they go from investigating Ozymandias and then they go, oh wait, it's actually him, and then they go straight to Antarctica?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was basically exactly what I was going to say. So, like, you know, you beat me to it, Tanner.
Yeah, with the ending too, I guess this is just like a suspend your disbelief moment, but I find it really hard to believe that the whole world is just going to go through a time of peace because some random fucking nukes basically got set off. And, like, obviously, yeah, there's a common enemy now, but, like, is that really going to just make all the world governments chill with each other? I highly, highly doubt that. It's kind of just some fucking, like, dopey feel-good ending bullshit, which I still like the, you know, it's not a good ending. I do like that the villain technically won. I think that's cool, but I don't really like the way he won. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It didn't work for me. It just feels kind of stupid.
Okay.
I really liked it when he was monologuing to them, and he told them, "Oh yeah, by the way, like, did you really think I was just gonna, like, sit here and, like, let you guys, like, even try to stop me or whatever? Like, I set this thing in motion like 30 minutes ago."
Yeah, that's a classic all-time line.
Right.
Yeah, I do appreciate this movie for how self-aware it is. Like, this is, I would say this is definitely my, like, favorite deconstruction of the superhero genre. And as I'm realizing now, people do this a lot more than I thought they did, like, deconstruct the superhero genre.
Oh, yeah.
Because the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I kind of fuck with this. And then I've seen it a bunch of times now, and I'm like, okay, I kind of get it. But this movie definitely has a lot of interesting takes with it. Like, it's straight up not even superheroes. They're just, like, normal-ass people that are, like, good at fighting, basically. Which is cool. I think the universe is really cool. I think this movie's really well acted too. There's some weird CG bullshit going on.
Like that big fucking elephant blimp or whatever they keep showing.
Yeah, there's some really bad looking shots, but for the most part, I think this is a pretty interestingly shot film, cinematography wise. They've got some unique ways of, like, showing stuff, which is cool. Generally, I would say this is a pretty well-produced film.
I'd agree. Fun fact about the elephant. They don't mention this at all in the movie, but because of Dr.
The elephant is God.
No. Because of Dr. Manhattan, existing, we figured out electric cars really early, and so, like, we see that Hollis, his car shop works on quote-unquote obsolete models. That means he works on gas-powered cars. Because the whole world has transitioned to electric vehicles already.
I see. Interesting.
That's what I'm hoping we can get sometime soon. Electric, just like self-driving vehicles. Traffic is going to be a thing of the past, boys. I cannot wait for that to happen.
I love traffic. I love getting stuck in highway traffic for hours.
Dude, I'm gonna bring up philosophy now.
Okay.
Please do.
So an interesting thing that a lot of people talk about with this series is the way that each of the characters is meant to represent sort of a different philosophy on morality. So Ozymandias, he's meant to represent utilitarianism. So like, as long as your action produces more good than it does bad, or propagates more happiness than not, then it's morally justified. And obviously we see this with his big plan where he's like, yeah, I killed several million people, but hey, I saved several billion, therefore everything's okay.
Based.
And I think a question they kind of ask with him is like, does he truly believe in this sort of, view of morality? Or is he just like an egomaniac who thinks he has, for some reason, the right to just impose his will on the world around him? We have...
I'm going to go for the latter, personally.
Yeah, I think, adopting all of these, like, Greek and Egyptian trappings and, like, literally calling himself the smartest man in the world, it makes me question his motives a bit, let's say.
Much like how you call yourself the smartest man in the friend group.
True. I never said that about this friend group, by the way. You're borrowing that from some other friend group that you're not a part of.
You believe it for this one, too.
True. Night Owl is a pragmatist, which it kind of just means, like, pragmatist is kind of like largely utilitarian, but, like, there are lines you shouldn't cross, essentially. A couple of questions I got about Night Owl. Why are he and Rorschach friends?
Because they were co-workers previously, I guess.
Yeah, they go way back.
Right, but like, I don't think it makes much sense for them to be so. They don't seem to particularly get along. They don't seem to particularly like each other, even.
Yeah, it seems like Rorschach has kind of had some screws loose for a while now, too, so... You think he kind of just would have cut him off at this point.
This actually does tie into something I wrote much later, but I'll bring it up now. So, like Jackson mentioned, this is sort of a deconstruction of the superhero genre. I think arguably the OG deconstruction. And something I kind of saw is that Night Owl and Rorschach are kind of both deconstructions of Batman, which I find interesting, where it's like, Night Owl is kind of like the man with the resources of Batman, but he doesn't really have the motivations or willpower, that kind of stuff. Whereas Rorschach is kind of like, he does have that sort of driving force of will that Batman has, but he doesn't have the fancy gadgets and whatever. And so it's kind of interesting where it ends up showing, okay, if you have Batman where it's just, the gadgets and stuff, but not the force of will, he's just kind of this, I don't know, spineless, weak-willed guy who, in his own words, seems to be putting on the costume or whatever just to feel some control over his life. Whereas Rorschach, if you have a Batman where it's just like the desire for vengeance and this, very black and white view of morality, you just have this crazy guy that's running around assaulting people,
Yeah, he's very morally gray once you mix that black and white together.
That sentence doesn't make any sense in the context of what I was just saying. You're just saying shit to say shit now.
Dude, Rorschach, he sees the world in black and white. That's what you just said.
Yeah, but why'd you, huh?
He becomes morally gray once you mix those colors together.
But, like, you don't.
What do you mean?
You don't mix those colors together, though. That's the whole point of the character.
Well, yeah, but he's still morally gray. That's all I'm saying, Tanner.
I think you're wrong.
You don't think he's a morally gray character?
He's like the most morally gray character of all time.
Rorschach is fucking base, dude. He's awesome. There's nothing morally gray about him. He's just correct.
Shut the fuck up. I am going to say that in a second here, but I'm talking about the other characters first because I find Rorschach the most interesting to talk about. Let me take a sip of my water here.
Rorschach's a fucking Sigma. I love that guy.
He is. The comedian is a nihilist. Where, he doesn't give a fuck about anything, so he just kind of does whatever he wants to. But we do see that he kind of has a change of heart at the end of his life with what he's saying to Moloch and whatever. And I'm kind of trying to figure out what exactly we're supposed to take from that. I'm wondering, because, like, I think the two best sort of implications there are he's kind of come to regret his life because he's, like, dying alone with no friends and family, and he's, like, ostracized from his biological daughter and whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely how I took it.
Or, and I think this is maybe the more interesting take, he sort of, he does discover Ozymandias's plot. I'm wondering if he was kind of shocked into conscious, because he was kind of going through the world where he's like, okay, I am intentionally choosing to have no moral code, so I don't care that I'm committing all these evil deeds. But then he discovers this plan, and he goes, oh, this guy has a moral code, and yet he is going to commit far more evil than I ever would have. Nothing? Okay, moving on to the next character.
No, I have nothing for that one.
Okay.
I gave you my 2 cents already, and you rejected it.
I didn't reject it, though. I agreed with you. I'm the one who said it first. And then, yeah, Dr. Manhattan, he's... they don't do a great job with doing this in the movie, but he's essentially predetermination, where, he kind of just believes that he isn't truly in control of his actions, and he's just going through the motions effectively. Something funny about Dr. Manhattan, I just find it funny how he kind of changes his mind about humanity, because obviously the monologue is better in the comic, but in the movie it kind of just boils down to, wait a second, your mother fell in love with her own rapist? Damn, you're right, humans are crazy, or whatever the fuck. And then he's like, you know what, I will save them then.
Which, by the way, he didn't even rape her in this movie. What the fuck was that?
He doesn't successfully rape her in the comic either.
Oh.
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of loses a bit of something.
Bummer!
Yeah, it's just an attempted rape, and he gets stopped by Hooded Justice in both of them.
Which, is still bad, obviously, but, like, I feel like it does lose some impact by not going all the way there.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe the author was like, well, I do want to have this sort of morally complicated situation where she still loves him, and if I did have him rape her and then she still fell in love with him, that'd be, like, extra hard to defend.
Yeah.
So like, oh, Laurie, he only tried, he didn't really do nothing, or whatever the fuck. Okay, finally, we're reaching Rorschach, the big man himself. He's obviously meant to represent sort of the Kantian categorical imperative, which is a fancy series of words that just means some actions are wrong no matter the context. And yeah, the thing with Rorschach is he's objectively right the entire movie. He's the only one that gives a fuck about any of the problems the entire time. And he's the only one trying to find solutions to this shit. And, when he's marching out into the snow to go tell the world the truth about what Ozymandias had done, that's just the right thing to do. So
never compromise, even in the face of Armageddon.
Yeah, exactly. So go ahead and give me your guys' argument for why I should think that black and white morality is wrong or something.
I don't think it's wrong. I think Nico's just saying that he's a gray character morally because, he, like, attacks the cops and shit, and that's not a good thing to do, generally.
That was self-defense, though. Therefore, morally right.
Self-defense?
Yeah. He was being framed, and they were gonna arrest him.
He should have gone through the legal process,
Yeah, he should have talked it out with them.
He should have came out with his hands up and nobody would have gotten hurt.
But they had already been hunting him down for years. They had a score to settle.
Yeah, because he's been doing illegal stuff.
Maybe I respect the laws of God than the laws of man, huh?
I guess that's a potential defense there, I suppose.
I will say, so like, both Zack Snyder, director of the movie, and Alan Moore, writer of the comic, have both said that you're supposed to think that Rorschach is essentially, like, wrong and the bad guy.
Yeah.
But every time I listen to interviews of these guys where they talk about that, they never point to anything about the ideology itself you're supposed to disagree with. They will just point to...
They just say, he's a nut job, look at this guy.
Exactly. They just point to these superficial character traits. They won't even say the nut job one. I remember an interview with Alan Moore where he just goes, he's short, ugly, and stinky. Why would you ever want to be him? I'm like, that doesn't... That doesn't make him wrong, though.
Dude, haven't you ever watched a Disney movie before? Ugly characters are wrong. They're the bad guy.
Like, it's the laziest, most superficial way of, like, trying to disprove an idea. And I think the problem Alan Moore ran into is that he wrote a character with an ideology he disagrees with, but he wrote the character so that they were internally consistent with that ideology, and that ideology is correct and his is wrong, and he doesn't know how to square those two things in his mind.
Consider this, Tanner. Rorschach hates the gays.
And that's a point in his favor.
Fair enough, dude.
And also, like even if we're like, yeah, he's homophobic, but like, we never see him like assault gay people or anything. We only see him beat up evildoers and the police. So, you know.
Some may say they're one and the same.
He does attack Ozymandias, though, because he thinks he's gay. I mean, that's not why he's doing it, but he does think he's gay.
Right. Let's see, what other... I'm done with the character analysis. Let's see, banger soundtrack. You all agree.
The times they are changing, for sure.
The times they are changing.
I cannot remember anything from the soundtrack of this
they
film.
They had 99 love balloons.
They sure did. Here's a question for you guys. In the movie studio, when Dr. Manhattan had his freak out, did you guys interpret that as him killing all those people?
No, I assumed he was just teleporting them away randomly
same
somewhere.
Here.
Yeah, that is true. They have a line in the comic where it says, yeah, they showed up in an empty parking lot. I don't think they had a line in the movie at all, so I
don't think they did either.
Yeah, so I think it's left a bit ambiguous in the movie for some reason, but... Well, actually, I guess if you're going... Since you changed the end plan where he is framing Dr. Manhattan, that actually does make more sense to leave it kind of ambiguous in that phase. So, fair play, Zack Snyder. A very minor element of the movie and the comic is the existence of the New Frontiersman newspaper. This is supposed to be a right-wing newspaper. Rorschach loves it, you know, and it's a poorly done critique that doesn't make any sense. Essentially, when this was written in 1986, it's sort of bemoaning the rise of politically biased and sensationalistic news sources, which Alan Moore blames on right-wing news. But biased news sources did not start in the 80s. It's just a wild thing to believe and blatantly not true.
Yeah, so when did they start then, huh, tough guy?
The thing, news has always been politically biased. It's just that, when we made the jump to television news, all of the channels initially were all had a left-wing bias, but since they all had the same bias, we just assumed that was the center. So as soon as we started adding news sources that had a right-wing bias, those look extreme from a center that was itself not actually in the center. And then, I just randomly write down that there's inspiration from Doctor Strangelove in this movie, but not an important detail, but I noticed it. Have either of you guys seen that movie?
No.
Never mind then.
Speaking of people who've seen movies, though, let's hear Dylan's thoughts on this one.
Alright, so next here for the review, I've got Watchmen. This was a 3-hour movie, and I was kind of dreading the fact of the length of the movie. Luckily, the length of the movie has nothing to detract from how good the movie was. I thought it was sufficient. I do think there was... So I'll immediately go back on this. I do believe there were some empty areas in the movie where there was kind of just nothing going on, or maybe some unimportant things. I remember Tanner saying this was the director's cut, so that kind of makes sense. But I liked the environment, I liked the world building, I liked the plot. It took me a while to figure out that this was kind of a superhero-esque movie, but I guess to say it's a vigilante movie is probably more accurate. Favorite character is Rorschach. I thought his character throughout the whole thing was very, very cool, and I like how they explored all the different characters and how they evolve over time, and really what's going on behind the scenes. And I'm not super big into politics, so maybe this movie made more sense to other people, but no, I thought the motivations of this movie were quite interesting. I think I talked with Jackson about it. I don't necessarily like the ideas or really even the movies where there's a person who's who thinks that the betterment for the world is to kill a lot of people or something. And we went more in depth with that. I'm sure Jackson will say something. It's just like a weird plot push that I particularly don't like. I think it's kind of a weak, cliche way of doing it. But overall, acting was really good. Effects were really good. I liked a lot of aspects of this movie. I thought it was very good. Kind of just like a Batman-esque movie. And I don't know whether this is DC or Marvel. I'm sure I'll find out when this episode comes out. But yeah, no, amazing movie. Thought it was very good. Just the length of it, and just maybe just some missed connections for me. But yeah, I thought Watchmen was an A+.
Wow, that guy liked this movie. It's shocking,
like
isn't it? You did like it.
Okay, that's good. I would have thrown a cat, let's say.
Yeah, and speaking of how much you liked it, do we have anything else to say about this one?
What the fuck? Night Owl and the woman, I didn't really care for them as characters that much, to be completely honest.
Yeah, same here.
Especially Night Owl. He was kind of a nothing burger for me. I mostly gave a shit about this movie when it was Blue Dude and Funny Guy on screen.
Yeah.
Which one's Funny Guy?
Funny Guy being not the comedian, but being
yeah, it's an important distinction there.
Right. Shooting pregnant Vietnamese women, based or cringe?
Cringe, dude.
Okay.
Cringe. He's kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah. Unpopular opinion. Also, by the way, for a guy called the Comedian, he wasn't exactly very funny throughout this movie.
It's more of a satire.
Oh, okay. Speaking of satire, so are we ready to get onto the rankings here?
Yes, I've said my piece.
Fantastic, dude. Dylan's ranking for Watchmen is an A+. Tanner, are you gonna one-up him there?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it an S+.
Sounds about right. Jackson, how about you, dude?
Yeah, so like I was alluding to with my review, I think this is a good movie overall. I enjoyed it, but I do think it's pretty messy. I think some of the characters are really cool. I don't know. I'm probably going to rate this one higher later, but I'm shooting low to start with. I gave it an A-.
God damn it, Jackson. I'm also giving an A-.
Holy cow.
I thought you were going to be like, ooh, I don't know, like a B, I guess.
No, I even with all of my gripes with this film, it would pain me to put this anywhere in the B tier. I think it deserves an A- at the very minimum.
Yeah, I agree.
But I could see myself rating this higher. And that puts it at an A+ overall.
Wow. That's a good...
It didn't break into S tier, unfortunately.
That's still a good rank, though,
Yeah, this was a blowout week in terms of quality here, inside of one film in particular.
Yeah, we got one good one. Hopefully, we'll be able to do a little better next week. Speaking of which, Jackson, which movie are you going to be picking, dude?
Ah, shit. Fuck. Dude, I don't know. I didn't think about this at all, now that I think about it. Dude, what did Dylan pick
Die Hard.
again? Die Hard. The first Die Hard? The first singular Die Hard? Dude, I guess I'll pick the 2012 film Life of Pi.
Interesting.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I read the book for this back in the day, but I've never seen the movie.
Yeah, I've seen the movie, like, back when it first came out. I remember almost none of it, though, and I don't think I liked it very much.
I think I like the book, but it's kind of a stupid story.
Yeah, the kid's name is Pissing.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Anyways, let's roll that Patreon. And we got Ichi the Killer, the 2001 film as requested by Tutbot. Thank you for the recommendation.
Oh boy, that's gonna be a fun one. Yeah, definitely can't wait for that.
How so?
I think it's pretty along the same lines as like Old Boy. It's a bit of a fucked up one, dude. It's a fucked up one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, definitely excited for it, though. Can't wait to check her out. And speaking of the Patreon, though, folks, if you, too, would like to subscribe to the Patreon and get your movies recommended, then you can do so by doing what Tanner says.
That's right. For only $1 a month over at patreon.com/Guapish, you will get early access to every episode, as well as exclusive access to the pre-Guap. Additionally, you get access to the Discord where you can request movies just like Tutbot did today. You can even request topics. At this point, you could be the first one to request a topic of us. And you get 500 slime coins. And finally, we are going to read your name out at the end of each episode, just like I am about to do. Thank you very much to Now name Blake, Neda Gant, Raheem Wajawani, Kyler Nikolai, Uranium Infused Motor Skills, Top Ramen Man, Joshua Bean, I'm Gay for Godzilla, Tutbot, and Lucas Ledette, and Hunter and Jacob Edwards. Oops. Thank you
very much for watching, and as always, please subscribe and ring that bell. Bye-bye!
Bye.
Bye-bye.